the amount of harm that you can do with information or excess information is very high. It's a bit like, since your show is called Coffee and Investing, it's very interesting to see, is coffee good for health or bad for health? And literally, every 2 days, you will see different people saying different things, and there'll be research backing it. Now, imagine if you changed your habits every second day, because the new research said 2 cups of coffee is good, but it should be black. 5 are terrible, but never have coffee before 3 o'clock, but have it between 2 and 3. It's best for your stomach. You'll go crazy. Right? And I think that's the challenge that investors are going to face.
Overload of information.
Too much information. And all of it will sound intelligent and right because all of it will be backed by research. So how do you stay focused on what my needs are? Because my needs are unique. The research is generic. My needs are unique. And how do you therefore ensure that what you do is to your unique place, not to what is happening elsewhere?
Welcome to Coffee and Investing with Saurabh. Today my guest is a very special guest. He is one of India's finest financial planners. His name is Vishal Dhawan. Welcome to the podcast, Vishal.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. Pleasure being here.
So, folks, I'll give you an introduction to Vishal. He's what we call a certified financial planner. There's a specific exam you have to pass to be a CFP. But more importantly, he's the co-founder of Plan Ahead Wealth Advisors. Now, Plan Ahead Wealth Advisors is a registered investment advisor with the SEBI, Securities and Exchange Board of India. India में केवल 1000 RIAs हैं, registered investment advisors हैं. Yeah, RIA बनने के लिए you have to pass a really tough exam. Thankfully, 6 years ago, I managed to pass the exam. I count that as one of my main professional triumphs in my career. So the point I'm trying to make to you is it's very difficult to become an RIA. We have the privilege of having an RIA with us today. Let's focus a little bit more on what Vishal and Plan Ahead does. They focus on giving investment advice to families in India, to NRI families, and they have a specific way of doing work. They call it add meaning to finances and add time to life, right?
That's right.
And this whole concept, add meaning to finances, add time to life. Vishal's firm has trademarked it. We'll ask him more about it. Just to give you a sense of the credibility of the organization that Vishal has co-founded, Plan Ahead was the best investment advisor in India for 2016, 17, 18 and 19. Outlook Money gave those awards, and 4 consecutive years they topped the charts. Not just in India, on a pan-Asia basis, they've been very successful. So in the Plan Plus Global Awards for the Asia region, Plan Ahead was the second runner-up for 2 consecutive years, 2017 and 18. By education, Vishal, like me, is an economics graduate. अच्छा subject है economics. मेरा अभी बेटे ने पढ़ने शुरू किया है. तो Vishal is an economics graduate, and then he did a MBA in finance, and following that he began a distinguished career in banking. We'll discuss that as we dive into Vishal's background. Before I get into Vishal's background, one more feather in his cap. The registered investment advisors in India, इनका एक trade body है. Trade body का नाम है ARIA, ARIA. Vishal was a founder director of ARIA. He was amongst the people who was responsible for creating this trade body, and ARIA has increasingly become a very relevant trade body for not just for the investment advice industry, but even say folks like me in the asset management industry look towards ARIA for cues on how to deal with the problems facing Indian families. So with that, let's get stuck into Vishal Dhawan's memorable career. So Vishal, I'll begin with your sort of first steps in your professional life, right? आपने वेलिंकर से MBA किया, वेलिंकर से 1996 you graduated, right? And you did, what I would consider to be, you got a prestigious job. Pfizer में आपको नौकरी मिली, right? MNCs में उस जमाने में mid-90s में किसी को MNC में नौकरी मिल जाती थी तो तुरंत पार्टी होती थी दोस्तों के लिए. I graduated at much the same time, so मेरे को वो जमाना याद है. But then you did something a little unusual. After a little bit at Pfizer, 1-2 साल Pfizer में आप ICICI बैंक में आ गए और आपकी बैंकिंग करियर शुरुआत हो गई. What happened? What led to that switch to ICICI Bank?
So I think one of the things that I've believed I was a confused young man.
Achha.
And when I went out to college, besides doing economics, I had also done hotel management along the way.
क्या बात कर रहे? Double degree.
So I had 2 sort of professional options available.
Wow, undergrad in economics and undergrad in hotel management.
That's right.
Fabulous.
And then a postgrad in finance. Because when I sort of spent time with economics and hotel management, I figured that finance is more the path that comes through.
Fascinating.
What did end up happening though is that as I sort of went through my MBA program, I realized that there's a need for a little bit of a holistic picture to come through. And at campus, Pfizer was the only company that came on campus which said that we're going to put you through a management associate program.
Right.
Which basically meant that you get the full flavor of the entire organization rather than being in a sort of a single function.
Bilkul ji.
And that to me was very, very appealing. So that first 1 to 1.5 year with Pfizer was remarkable because I spent time dealing with human beings at Pfizer as a part of their sort of consumer normal human being business.
Right.
And then there were also animals, and there were large animals and small animals.
What? Wow, I didn't know this.
So you actually dealt with cows, buffaloes, veterinary.
Wow,
doctors,
Pfizer had an animal medicine wala division
an
as well.
animal health division. And then you also had small animals that they were thinking about coming to. That time, dogs and cats were not as popular in India during that phase.
Right.
So it was a good, solid 1 year, 1.5 year where you went through everything. But as I went through that journey, I did realize that it's probably not going to be as mainstream as I would like it in finance. So ICICI Bank was a very small bank at that time, just starting off. It was just a few years.
2 years old.
Yeah, just a little more. I think maybe 5 years at that time. And the thing was that ICICI Bank would not hire people who have previous experience.
Would not.
So I had to somehow get myself into that list of people who they might call for an interview.
Right.
If I wanted to. So I joined them as a management trainee by writing in CV in verse instead of in writing.
So, you wrote a CV in verse, poem ki tarah.
Yeah, because that was the only way I could come into that piece. So you needed to do something different to stand out.
God.
I mean, that was.
But that
nice.
does mean you're a poet as well, alongside being a financial planner.
Yeah, that's probably what got me my wife and co-founder as well. Though she complains that neither to cook nor to write poetry anymore. But
सबके साथ होता है.
So the transition to ICICI came from there, and I think it was again a great time to transition to ICICI because ICICI was a very ambitious organization and a very flexible organization, and speed was at the essence of whatever you did. So in those 4-5 years that I spent with ICICI, I always tell people it was like 40 or 50 years because you did so much so quickly. And you also understood a little bit about thinking forward because when we used to talk in ICICI, we would always speak a lot of what the future is about and less about what the past is. And I think that's very, very useful. Who knows, maybe somewhere in our subconscious, our company's brand plan ahead also came from there without us realizing it. So I think it was a very, very interesting journey.
And ABN AMRO followed after ICICI?
That's right. So ABN AMRO followed for a couple of years after ICICI. So ABN had just taken over Bank of America's retail business at that point. So they were looking for product management to happen.
Right, okay.
And they were headquartered in Delhi. My previous jobs and college were
Connaught Place mein office.
That's right. So we were in Bombay. And so my wife at that time moved along with me. So she had her own corporate career at that time. So we moved together to Delhi and worked there for a couple of years before we co-founded Plan Ahead.
Okay. So 2003 is when you guys set up Plan Ahead, right? Now, if I think back to the Indian stock market in 2003, stock market itself was a very niche activity, right? Most Indians used to buy real estate, or agar financial products mein dalna hai to fixed deposit, right? National saving certificate. So in that sort of era where equity investing was a very niche thing, how did you guys build the courage, the clarity of thought to set up a investment advisory, financial advisory business 2003 में? तो शुरुआती स्टोरी थोड़ा समझाएंगे प्लान एड का.
Yeah, so I think there were two things that we saw along the way in our corporate careers. One was that the organizations that we worked with, and they were all good organizations, were unfortunately not very focused on the customer. They were focused on the business. And this was something that surprised us because from where I came from, which was essentially a hotel management background originally, and where my wife came from, Shalini, which was consulting, the customer is at the center of the business.
Very interesting, yes.
While these businesses were all about what's happening in the business metrics. How am I tracking against
revenues,
numbers,
margins,
revenues, margins, etc. And we were like, unfortunately, there are people on the other side who are seeking help with problems that they're facing. Now, those problems could be good problems or bad problems. There are good decisions and bad decisions that they have to make. Sometimes they have to let something go because of getting something else. Let's say, give up on a fancy car so that they can have a good retirement. Or on the other side, they have two good decisions to make, saying, do I send my kids to study overseas for graduation or post-graduation or both? But at the end of that, your business metrics in your business could not be this deciding factor on where I should be going.
Right.
And for us, that was a very fundamental disconnect that came. In fact, even as we were setting up our business, we spoke to a few people asking what should we do with our money, because we had some money, we had worked for a few years. And within about 3 minutes of a conversation, there was a product that would appear on the table.
ये खरीद लो आप.
If you put this here, your problem is solved. And I was like, I don't know how this will solve my problem. My problem is not where should I put my money. Right? I'm trying to get bigger questions answered right now, saying, do I have enough health insurance? What is the right amount of health insurance I need if I'm going to become an entrepreneur? What if something happened to both of us? Are we covered right? How many years of buffer should I
just to go back 22 years, because the reason I'm going back is आज भी मुद्दा उतना ही serious है जो आप समझा रहे हो. Was the issue then that the intermediary you were speaking to did not know how to answer your question, or was he simply not interested in answering your question? वो सिर्फ आपको product चिपकाना चाहता था. Challenge कहाँ पे था?
So I think the problem is both. I think by training, a lot of people are more designed and trained around specific financial products.
Right.
And therefore, what ends up happening is that's your port of first call by default. Because if someone tells you, I have 10 lakh rupees to invest, my default, my brain goes to saying that, oh, right now, equities look good, real estate looks good, PPF looks good, markets look good, etc., etc. And therefore, my first answer is a product.
Right.
The second thing that happens is that if I, at the back end, have targets, etc., that's also playing on my mind, saying that, how do I reach my objectives? So if there's a great way that the client objective and my objective can be reached, fantastic. If there is no great way to do that, then maybe my objective is more important than the client's objective.
Right.
And that's where I think it became clearer to us that the need for a client investor centric model is probably a very, very critical need.
Very interesting.
And we continue to believe that, it's still something that is a gap that exists in this industry. I mean, I would have thought the pace at which India is going, 20 years, 22 years, I mean, I used to have loads of hair on my head. I would have thought it would have been completely different, but unfortunately it isn't. It's still very product centric. And sometimes, I think even investors want that answer very quickly. I mean, I think they don't want to go through the patient journey of building out a financial plan, thinking strategically about their life.
So ये Daniel Kahneman की जो book है Thinking Fast and Slow, उसमें उन्होंने he said that क्या होता है, whether it's Saurabh Mukherjea or Saurabh Mukherjea's intermediary, you ask anyone a hard question, their brain will try to find an easier question to answer. So if Vishal Dhawan asks an intermediary, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, what is my financial plan? That's a hard question. It's hard at many levels. Not only does Vishal have to be patient and give lots of answers, the intermediary has to apply his mind and figure out Vishal ka plan kya hona chahiye. The easier question to answer is, of course, 10 lakh hai to falani product up le lo, right? So it's as the years have gone by, I felt that this is less about the intermediary being sinister or anything. Aisa nahi hai. Both the client, myself, and the intermediary are trying to answer an easy question rather than the far tougher question. The far tougher question requires the sort of exams you have passed, the sort of mehnat you have done to figure out how to answer these difficult questions time and time again, right?
Absolutely.
So 2003 में आप लोगों ने बॉम्बे में शुरुआत की या दिल्ली में you started?
No, we started in Bombay itself.
Okay.
In fact,
so relocated back from Delhi.
We relocated back from Delhi. In fact, just to sort of take on the last part of your point, we do agree that, most times intermediaries themselves are not thinking in a sinister manner.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, the way incentive programs are built
Hmm.
is that they tend to drive you towards that direction by default.
Hmm.
Because what ends up happening is that there's no money to just give advice. Or even today, because there are such few investment advisors, you don't necessarily earn from that deeper conversation that you have.
Yeah.
You may be building very high quality advice as a result of that, but there is hesitation to pay for that time, even though it's probably the most critical time that can be
Yeah.
put together in that engagement.
See, massive paradox. And we'll come to the number of investment advisors that come क्यों है. So that was 2003, right? We're sitting here in 2025. How much has How has Plan Ahead grown and prospered in the last 2 decades?
So I think we've done a decent job. I wouldn't say it's been spectacular. We work with about 380 odd families.
Wow.
And we are a fee only firm, which basically means that we earn no commissions.
You only charge a fee
We
from
only
the
charge a
client?
fee from
No
the client.
commission.
There are no commissions.
And the fee is articulated as a fixed rupees wala value, or it's a percentage of the
It's
assets?
largely a percentage of assets, but in certain cases when investors are just starting off, when they still need good quality advice but haven't built the assets, we do have
Fixed fee.
a fixed fee model, but it's
Okay.
largely built on an AUM basis.
So ऐसा नहीं है कि फैमिली का मिनिमम नेटवर्थ 10 करोड़ होगा तभी विशाल धवन.
Yeah, so we've tried to build it that way. I think we've tried to position ourselves always as a professional services firm. If you walked into a lawyer's office, you walked into a doctor, etc. It's, I think we think, as a professional, as long as we get compensated for a fair fee, we're okay. It doesn't mean that as a great heart specialist,
Right.
I say that, hello, what's your net worth? If your net worth is X, then only I will do a heart surgery for you. So we pretty much assumed and have believed that, minimums have their own limitations.
Right.
In terms of what they do. And ultimately, there is a new breed of people who are saying we want to start right from day one.
Fabulous, yeah.
And we don't want to make mistakes and learn along the way. And obviously, there are mistakes we have made, there are mistakes our clients have made. Everyone makes mistakes.
And how does the discovery process work? How does, say, a couple who just about come into a little bit of money after 10 years of hard work in Bombay or Bangalore or Delhi, how do they find out about Plan Ahead and how do they get in touch with you guys?
So typically, I think a lot of our business and our clients come through word of mouth. We do have a reasonable media presence. We do a lot of print media, a lot of television, etc., etc. But more often than not, those are just inquiries that come from there. I think the larger level of engagement tends to come from existing clients.
They refer other friends.
They refer friends, family, etc.
Fantastic. Yeah.
We also do find that when people go through transitions, which are for them very critical transitions, they look for people like us. Because over a period of time, people have looked at, saying who can solve this problem. Let's say I want to become an entrepreneur. 20 years back or 22 years back when we were starting off, there was no one you could go to.
Yes.
Today, you can actually ask yourself saying that, of course, entrepreneurship is much fancier today than it used to be.
Yeah, glamorous ho gaya.
It's very glamorous. At that time, it was like, are you sure you want to quit your corporate
job?
Why would you do that, right? But times change. So what we see is entrepreneurs now, let's say you want to do that, there still needs to be a plan around it. And it needs to be a robust plan so that you can give yourself time. I think the problem is definitions of long-term everywhere have changed. And I see even for entrepreneurs, a lot of them who come to us are saying, I've created 1 year, 2 year buffer. And part of what we have forced to do with them is tell them that, 1 year and 2 years is not long-term. Unfortunately, your revenues will be half of what you've projected. Unfortunately, your expenses will probably be 2 times of what you've projected. So if you give yourself 1 or 2 years of buffer, it's too short. You give yourself 3-5 years. Give yourself the space, give yourself the time. I think too many businesses fail because they don't give themselves enough time. And that happens because of 2 things. One is they don't have the numbers right. And the second is they haven't prepared their ecosystem around them to deal with it. So, when you have a spouse or a kid who comes to you and tells you that, what about a holiday? And you've become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
if you've not prepared them for it, saying no holidays for the next 3 years or no fancy holidays for the next 3 years and none of that,
Tough,
it gets
yeah.
very
Yeah,
hard.
yeah.
And then, just running a business is hard work, as you
Yeah.
know as well.
Yeah, tell me about
So,
it. Yeah.
so as you sort of run that business, I think fatigue sets in. There is pain, some of that. So I think some of the mental strength and financial strength that you need to be an entrepreneur typically requires outside support, someone to talk to who's unbiased in the whole process, who understands what an entrepreneur's journey is about, the highs and lows, and there are lots of highs and probably a lot more lows and highs as well.
Yeah.
So I think you need to deal with all of that, and that's where you need a sounding board.
Fabulous, yeah.
Fabulous
So,
advice.
your strap line, I found it very interesting. So, add meaning to finances, add time to life. So, time to life wala bit to samajh aa gaya, right? For people like me, a financial planner of your caliber is saying, you don't have to sweat about your finances, Saurabh, hum kar denge. What does add meaning to finances mean?
So I think one of the things that we find people get very confused on is that, is money the end or is it a means to an end? Very often, especially when you're younger, you believe that money is an end by itself. So there are people who project saying, I want to have a net worth of 1 crore, 10 crores, 100 crores, 1,000 crores, whatever. I mean, whatever their own imagination defines as a nice big number. In reality, what we've seen is that money plays certain roles in people's lives. For someone, it could be about saying that, I'm free to quit my job the day I find that I'm not doing what I enjoy doing. For someone else, it's about saying that, we live in an AI world, and I don't know if my kids will ever have jobs of the kind that we've had.
Yes.
So I need to ensure that
They are sorted.
there is sorted. I
Lovely.
mean, to a decent extent. I mean, I don't have to support every single need that they have, but maybe I just want to ensure that they can have a basic standard of living and not be dependent on what a tech investor in the US chooses to do all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So, and then there could be much deeper things that are important to people. There are people who could, we find a lot of couples come to us where one partner has compromised their careers to support the other partner.
Right.
And for them, working means something completely different from, the money that you get. So it's not about the 1 lakh rupees a month or 3 lakh rupees a month of salary. It's about the fact that I'm going back to work and doing something which is productive in my head rather than just running a household. Right? So as you do a lot of that, you start to yourself figure out, and your clients start to figure out, saying that what is that money going to do for us as a family or as an individual? And these are the kind of things that we think are even more important, because we find otherwise when we speak to some of our older clients that they have this huge void which has come through. Sometimes the void is coming through saying, I had a bucket list of being an entrepreneur.
Haji.
I just didn't become an entrepreneur. For what? Because I didn't know that, I could have quit my job at some point and the business could have failed and I could have still been okay. Because no one could tell me that, you can afford to lose 3 crores in your business
Right.
and still be okay. So what a robust financial plan does is it actually comes out there and says that, okay, so what's that things that are going to add meaning to your life, saying that, yes, I led a full life, I did the kind of things I wanted to do, etc. And still be comfortable with saying that I never took such a big risk that I was,
Out of
regretting
pocket, yeah.
it after so many years.
So basically, optimizing life, living life to the full.
Absolutely. Get the life
Zindagi
experiences
da,
that you want.
zindagi ka lutf uthao, I think, as they say in Hindi. Fascinating. Huh? Now, one thing I wanted to ask you, as soon as you said 380 clients, right? This is an artisanal business. The clients are coming because it's your name on the door. They're expecting your time, your application of thought into their finances. But साल में तो केवल 365 दिन है और 380 clients है. How do you deal with this sort of client load? I mean, is there a larger team that you have trained, and if so, how have you scaled the business?
Yeah, so I think this business is very much a process-driven business. I think what people do like to see is this more experience that maybe Shalini and me bring to the table, because we've been doing this for 22 years. But we do have a team of about 35 people who work with us. And all of those people are doing their own roles at the firm. What we do find is there are very important points at which investor families want our intervention because they feel that that experience that we bring to the table is very valuable at that stage. So I would say life's very big decisions, they'd love to run through us.
जैसे कि retirement.
Let's say, I'm planning to quit my job and it could end up being my retirement because I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back because I'm already 50. Now, that's probably an irreversible decision
बिल्कुल,
once
yeah.
you quit at 50 and then want to go back and also give yourself enough time to be an entrepreneur or something else. So when people are making those kind of big decisions, they do want to talk to us, get that sense. Also, when they're laying out their first financial plan, they're trying to build a roadmap for the future. They're actually trying to ask us, saying that, because you've gone through this journey, you probably have seen the hotels on the way and the motels on the way and the dhabas on the way. So can you just tell us where to stop, where the food will be decent and I won't have a stomach problem?
Right.
So they want us to walk through that initially, but once that process is in place and you've got a roadmap in place, etc., they probably don't want to see as much of us as people believe. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs make themselves indispensable in their system because a part of their own importance comes from that process and that role. I think a lot of what we do, let's say for example investment management, we have a team, right, and they're spending time trying to identify which are the right products, active, passive, which vehicle to use, etc., etc. It may not need our intervention
Right.
at every stage to explain to a client that this product is the right fit for you. So we found over a period of time that you can actually scale this business much more than people imagine. You can also scale it much lesser than what people imagine.
Right.
So there is a right size of that business so that it sort of works well.
So you're saying if Vishal and Shalini can make this work with even 50 clients, and given the sort of processes and team you've built, Vishal and Shalini can also run this business really well at 500 clients.
Probably even a couple of thousand.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because those processes can scale
Wow,
to
fabulous.
that. But I think if you said that, I want to add 1 million clients in every year into my business, I don't think this model allows that to happen.
By the way, you make all your colleagues pass that really tough SEBI ka RIA wala exam.
Yeah, we have to. Actually, that's a regulatory requirement.
Right, wow.
So
everybody who's facing with clients has to pass
do
that.
NISM 1080.
Now, respect,
So
respect. Tough exam.
It's not an easy exam. I think the only good news is that the renewals are now done through a separate process. There is a 10C, which is a little easier, but to clear it the first time is quite hard.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you this, right? This is one of the processes I've not told anybody about. Level 1, the pehla level to easy tha. I went to Navi Mumbai to give the exam. First level was easy. Second level, right? I sort of prepared for it, pad ke gaya tha, but I hadn't anticipated how hard the paper will be. And I think the pass mark is 60 aisa kuch hai, right? So by the time I finished, the rest of the room was empty. And I kept telling myself, either I'm the stupidest moron in the room, right? Or everybody else has crash landed and left. Now, problem for me was the invigilator, since there was nobody else in the room, she was standing behind my head. And as you know, when you finish the exam, after you finish the last question, the marks will flash up on the screen, right? So I had one of those moments in life where I said, मैं enter button दबाऊंगा, last question पे स्क्रीन पे आएगा सौरभ मुखर्जी का मार्क्स एंड दिखेगा कि वो फेल हो गया है. इन्विजिलेटर अभी सोशल मीडिया पे डाल देगी. Thankfully, I hit the enter button and I passed. I almost collapsed with relief there, right? So respect to SEBI for creating an exam as tough as this. Although I do wonder whether this is one of the reasons why India doesn't have more registered investment advisors. Do you think this is a causal factor कि process इतना tough बना दिया है कि दूसरे लोग आ ही नहीं सकते?
So I think there are 3 reasons that we see. One is that there aren't enough role models for people to say that this is how successful investment advisory businesses run. I think in asset management, for example, there are enough role models, ambassadors that already exist. I think one part of what we have to do is to convince people in the country that investment advisors is not a Western concept which succeeds in the West. It's also a concept that can succeed in India because
Very
people
interesting.
are the same. They need advice. They need someone to sit down with them and tell them that, unfortunately, you cannot send your children overseas to study because your finances can't support it. So what if your neighbor has sent them? Maybe even his or her finances can't support it, but the person doesn't know. So we need, number one, role models to get created. And I think we are a very nascent profession. The license itself has come in 2013. So it's 10, 12 years now, right? If you go back and look at asset management, it's been in the country. I mean, UTI came up in 1964,
60s,
right? So we're talking about like 60 years versus 12, 13 years.
Fair point.
So it's a very nascent profession. So I'm sure there'll be role models that get created over a period of time. The second thing is that the entry barriers used to be very high. So the NISM 10A, 10B, for example, was a challenge. It has got partly addressed, but partly not addressed. And I'll explain to you why I'm saying that. So what used to happen in 2013 onwards was that I had to give my 10A, 10B exam every 3 years to keep my practice alive.
Oh, wow.
So what would end up happening is that you had to give that exam every 3 years to clear that exam, which meant that if you were a smaller practice, it was about the existence of your business itself. Because if you didn't clear that exam, your business itself closes down. And that's not what an entrepreneur wants to see.
And it's right? 2 weeks out of your time.
Yeah, and it's also you need to prepare and all of that, because the practice and the theory may be a little
tough.
different.
Yeah, it's different.
Other, right? So that has got addressed more recently. So now they say you clear it once. After that, you give another exam, which is sort of much easier to clear.
Right.
But that was definitely an entry barrier.
Right.
Along with other entry barriers. So there was, a net worth retirement requirement, which used to be a large amount of money for a profession. If you think about other professions that existed, they normally don't have net worth because an investment advisor doesn't hold securities.
That's right.
Doesn't hold money. He's only giving advice. So the risk to the investor comes from the quality of advice that's getting delivered. There is no risk of him shutting shop overnight and disappearing with your money. So there was a little bit of a mismatch between what probably happened.
That's been rectified, is it?
It's been rectified. That's
okay.
Right. The third thing is that compliance is still a fairly extensive process. So while the Association of Registered Investment Advisors has done a lot of good work in trying to lighten this, there is still regulatory arbitrage between intermediaries where the investment advisors probably having to do a lot more.
Right.
And I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say if I'm charging a percentage of assets under advice fee. So let's say you as an investor tell me that these are all my assets that I have, right? And you're giving me that information and signing off a document saying these are my assets under advice. The regulation requires us to go back and ask the client for proof that these are the assets under advice. Now, what it means is that, let's say my PPF balance is approximately 30 lakhs, right? That's what people are telling us. Now, we want that proof to see that is it 29 lakhs 51,487 or is it 30 lakhs 18,444? The plan is not going to change because of that. The investor is also like roughly there, right? 30 lakhs. He's saying that. But I think a lot of this creates friction. So from the point of entry, if you have to do these kind of things, I think it delays implementation. Anyway, financial planning by default is a long process because you need to iterate and come to that conclusion. You need spouses to be involved. So in general, it's a
uske upar the fee charging itself becomes
fee charging itself is like a cumbersome process. So I think there are some of these gaps that still exist, and therefore I think a lot of people are just saying that let me just go with light compliance elsewhere rather than go to higher compliance with investment advisors.
Right. So clearly, the trade body, the Association of Registered Investment Advisors, has had some success, but there is work to be done.
That's right. There's still probably work to be done.
Tell me something. How did this come about? How did this trade body come about? Did you guys get together in a Bombay restaurant one evening and decided over a cup of filter coffees ki banana hai, ya regulator ne kuch bola aap logon ko?
So it was a very interesting thing that the IA license, of course, came up in 2013. There was no trade body, but the origin of the IA license came because there was financial planning itself that was not actually regulated at that point. So as a concept, financial planning didn't exist. There was regulation for individual products that existed. So if you're a mutual fund, you had regulation. If you're in PMS, you had regulation. If you're in AIF, you had regulation.
Advice
But
पे कोई
financial
regulation.
planning did not have regulation, right? So that's where the origin of investment advisory.
So from
regulations came from.
2003 to 13, you basically operated outside the ambit of regulation.
So we had to have licenses. So let's say we had a distribution license
I see.
through
हाँ,
MFI.
MFD का
MFD
हाँ,
license, because
ठीक है.
that was all that existed at
ठीक है.
that point. But we were still charging a fee to clients.
Right,
at
got
that
it.
time,
Right.
because we felt that the kind of work that we're
Right.
doing cannot be compensated through the.
So Plan Ahead was one of the first companies in the country to go and get an RIA license.
Yeah, so
ठीक.
we took a license in 2013 itself, which is when the regulations.
Fantastic. So you were mentioning how the trade body came
Yeah,
about.
so essentially from there to the next 3 or 4 years, we realized that there were still very large gaps that existed. Just as a simple example, direct plans in mutual funds
Yeah.
came out in 2013 as well.
Yes.
But along with that came regulation, which basically said that information about a direct plan can only go to the customer, it cannot go to the intermediary.
Oh, okay.
So look at the paradox, right? So you're my client, you call me and tell me, hey, Donald Trump has done something. I mean, of course, luckily he wasn't doing things in 2013, but let's say he comes, something happens in the US. You call me and say, Vishal, what's happening in my portfolio? Do I need to do anything? And I say, Saurabh, send me your data first, then I will tell you what you can do.
Right.
So there was a disconnect, right? There's a fundamental disconnect. And therefore, we spent many years at an individual level. People who were like us would go and speak to
The regulator one-on-one.
Regulator one-on-one, AMCs, etc., and try to tell them that this is not logical, right? There is no commercial arrangement, so we are not seeking a commercial arrangement from you. We just want data because we have to give the right advice to the investor. So we realized that one-on-one conversations don't have those amount of legs as people getting together and saying it, because otherwise it may feel like it's an individual need, which may not be the reality.
कुछ आपका स्वार्थ है ये करने में, तो इसलिए आप बोल रहे हो.
Exactly. So it's not an individual need. So there is a very popular community called Network FP, which you're probably aware of. So they used to run these annual conferences, and over there, one of the questions that got asked in a poll that was run at a Network FP conference at the end of the day was saying that, is it time for a trade body? And if yes, who would you like to see as part of that trade body? So that's actually where the origin.
Which year are we talking
from,
about? When
2017.
Fantastic. Oh.
So we owe a lot of investment advisors owe a lot to Network FP and Sadiq and his team for actually first putting this together, saying that there needs to be a separate body. And then it sort of started very small. Then a not-for-profit got set up, and then obviously because it comes very naturally to investment advisors to do what is in interest of clients, it aligned very well with SEBI's investor interest program.
Right.
And therefore, by default, what ended up happening is those conversations were of very high quality, because what we were seeking was always keeping in mind also what investors may need to be.
So the regulator was supportive of the
Exactly, very,
idea.
very supportive. And I think a lot has changed. I think the conversations have been very good. The conversations have been deep. A lot of changes have also happened. I think there's a little bit more leg up to be done, including just investor education about how different intermediaries are different from each other. I think if you go to the consumer, he's not able to understand this alphabet soup of, intermediaries. Because for him, he's not able to distinguish who's an broker, who's an advisor. All of that is very tough. So I think without trying to promote one particular type of intermediary, I think there's a need for education saying that if you are seeking the following items, go to a distributor. If you're seeking the following items, go to an advisor. Because I think you need to find the match. And that's especially important in new professions. Because if you go back to, say, the medical profession, it's a good example of this challenge. Once upon a time, you had a general practitioner.
Yeah.
And everyone went to the general practitioner. Now, today, the patient and his family is evolved enough to actually say that if I have a problem with a particular part of my body, then I need to go to a specialist in that zone.
Right.
And that's not happened overnight. It's happened because there's been education along the way for many years.
Right.
I think the need of the hour is that unfortunately we can't wait for 100 years for this evolution to happen.
Right.
I think we need someone to come in there who's a neutral person. let's say if I'm the Association of Registered Investment Advisors and I go and advertise and I put out a media campaign saying go to an investment advisor, it's biased. It's not going to be listened to in the same way as a regulator going and saying that there are 4 types of people who report into us. This is what each of them do.
This is a
Please pick the right
manufacturer,
kind of
this is a
advisor.
intermediary who's a distributor, this is a advisor who's
Correct.
got the client's
and
interest.
therefore go to the kind of person who you need to. I can also give you guidelines on in which situation to go to which kind of person.
Fabulous.
I think that's what you need, because that's where awareness will go up.
Fabulous.
You obviously need money behind it. I mean, associations like Registered Investment Advisors, small associations, they do the right work, but they're not money rich.
No, you guys are making a lot of progress here. Last 6-7 years, you put yourself on the map. All credit to ARIA for that. But going back to your practice to plan ahead, how have you seen your 380 clients' needs change over the last decade?
So very significantly, I think the goals itself have shifted. So if you go back to 10 years ago, right? Very few people used to talk about a concept like financial freedom. They would talk about retirement,
हाँ जी.
or they would talk about early retirement, or they would talk about tiredness. Those were the kind of things that they would define these, sort of goals about.
Right.
That shift is complete now, where most people tell us that, really, I don't know if I want to retire at 50. I just don't want to be working for the money. That's really what I'm seeking.
Right.
So that conversation has shifted.
So Maslow's hierarchy mein people have gone.
People have moved up. That's right. Similarly, with education, right? Big shift has happened. From a point where hardly anyone would say that, I'm looking for an overseas education. Now the question is that, can I afford IB from day one for my child? So that conversation is
Fascinating. So even in middle class families, day one say IB afford.
Yes, I mean, can I afford it or not? Now, whether they choose to do it or not is a separate story. So there is a combination of things that are happening. There is more choices. There is some amount of peer pressure that's probably coming through as well. But there's also the question getting asked saying that, is learning by rote a preferred model than learning by experience? And therefore that question itself has led to a set of different answers. And that's the big shift that we've started to see people take. The way that they want to buy houses has shifted. We need to remember 10 years ago, India had gone through a 10-year boom in real estate.
Bilkul.
So everyone at that point felt that the first thing that they needed to do was to buy a house.
Bilkul.
Today, the question is about saying that, do I want to rent through my life? I never want to buy a house.
Right.
And that's a huge shift that has happened. So we've seen all of these trends change over this period of time. And the other thing that has happened is, I think people look a lot more at even their portfolios in a very different manner. Should it be passive or active? 10 years back, when you would talk to people about passive, they'd be like, really? I mean, like,
what's wrong with you?
we know, I mean, fund managers have all the information. So therefore, there's no way that a passive fund will beat an active fund. So you'd have to show them data internationally, etc., etc. Now, at least that conversation is a level conversation. Should I have all my money in India? Or should I have it internationally?
ये शुरू हो गया
10
बात.
years back, that didn't exist, right? So we started putting things internationally into investor portfolios, I think in 2011-12. Now, we see a lot more people say, why not? Rather than, buy. So I think those kind of shifts have started to happen at multiple levels. And obviously, media, awareness, information, etc. is at a very different level.
Fantastic. So I was doing some research on you, Vishal, and I found a testimonial that one of your clients, his name is Rajiv Ambekar, one of your clients has put a testimonial on you on the internet, right? So this is what Rajiv has to say about you. You are
Rajendra, right? So his name is
Rajendra Ambekar.
Yes.
Right. So Rajendra has to say about you. He says you are unbiased, passionate, confident, humble, focused, and considerate. He has many hues. Then he says something even more interesting. He says, the best is his courage in being able to stand up and not just advise, but to be able to stick through the consequent impact. So आप कुछ just ऐसे बोलने के लिए बोल नहीं देते, आप advice देते हो, and whatever the consequences of the advice are, you stick through the consequent impact. So can you talk about this courage piece, right? क्योंकि जब लोग financial planning, financial advice के बारे में सोचते हैं, courage is not the first adjective that comes to mind. So where does courage come in your line of work, and what does stick through the consequent impact mean in this context?
So I think a lot of what we do is contextual work, right? So the same piece of advice for Saurabh and Raj may not hold true because we are able to see their entire P&L and their entire balance sheet. And on top of that, we are able to overlay what their aspirations are. So even though they may live next to each other in an apartment block, we are able to see them as two separate individuals, and not just individuals, but their families could have very different aspirations from each other. So a lot of times what ends up happening is we have to make people make unpleasant choices. Let's say there's someone who we say that unfortunately you cannot upgrade your car.
Wow.
It's not what you want your financial advisor to necessarily.
And you say it as bluntly as you said.
Yeah, we would say it as bluntly. I mean, we would be able to explain it with numbers to explain why it's not possible. But unfortunately, you can't upgrade your car right now. Or if you want to upgrade the car, then be ready for the trade-off on the other side, which may be that you may have to work for 2 years extra in your career. So you have to make this choice. I cannot make the choice for you, but I can tell you this is the picture in terms of finances. Once you can see that picture, it's very often the client coming back to you and saying, so what would you do in my situation? Right? And that's a very common question that comes to us saying, hey, Vishal, we trust you. So what would you do? And that answer has to come from having the context to the entire plan. Because what could happen is that if I know that those 2 years are okay for the client to work extra and it's not going to change his life. He's never come back and told me that, I want to retire at this age, come what may. Or, for me, like, I hate my job. I just don't want to do what I do, etc. But that car purchase is very important for his family and for what it does and what it enables. My response may be different as compared to if I knew that the client has a very compelling need to stop working, either because his job itself is at risk, which can happen, right? You get signals from your employer, etc., that your job itself is at risk. Now, when you make that decision, each of those are good and bad decisions.
Super, yeah. Wow.
So what will then end up happening is that I have to go out there and deal with the impact. So when the person goes to work for those 2 extra years, he's going to walk into a meeting and tell me that, I don't know when you're going to allow me to retire. And, while we can joke about it, I have to go back and remind the client saying that, yeah, we're working for 2 extra years, but this is what you got in return. And unfortunately, that's what it is.
And therefore, there's courage required at many levels. There's courage to have a difficult conversation with someone who's paying you. And never easy in professional service. वही आपको पैसे दे रहा है, आप उसी को tough message दे रहे हो. Secondly, फिर आप बोल रहे हो, buy the car and work the 2 extra years, and therefore you need courage, because if he gets sacked 1 year into those 2 years, then he has to bear the consequences. And thirdly, the courage to then, if things go south after you've given the advice, to help the client deal with the consequences.
Absolutely. In fact, unfortunately, most people don't like to hear no, right? So unfortunately, our job is always to say no for a lot of things. And sometimes it is to say yes as well, saying that...
I suspected that giving financial advice has this sort of dimension to it, but nobody had teased it out as clearly as you have. So lots of youngsters watching this, we mentioned the need for the country to have more RIAs. Right? From what I find plenty of youngsters, उन सबको fund manager बनना है, equity analyst बनना है. Gradually, I'm finding that investors also realize that there is an advisory profession that beckons. There's plenty of unmet need for advisors, but they often don't know कौन सी qualification करनी चाहिए. CFP करें, CA करें, CFA करें. What's your advice to youngsters who want to enter your line of work, but they don't quite know how to go about it? कौन सा professional qualification लेना है?
So I think just 2 things, right? One is they have to realize that the professional qualification that you have is one part of the ammunition that they will bring to the world that they're going to be a part of. It is not the sole driver of it. Somehow the belief that I see happen is that there's a belief that this is a magic wand. If I get a CFA against my name, my life will transform. If I get a CFP against my name, my life will transform.
हाँ जी.
If I get a CA against my name, my life will transform. That's not the reality.
नहीं होता है अच्छा.
The reality is that professional qualification, hard work, and good communication. All these three things go hand in hand. If you're able to bridge the gap on all of these, I think you're in the right place to achieve success. Now, whether you will or not always, luck has a role to play. Timing has a role to play. But what I see happen very often is that there is popularity trends that take over. So at a certain time, a CA is a more popular qualification. At another time, a CFA is a more popular qualification. At another time, a CFP is. The question is, what do you enjoy doing? If you're a person who likes to talk to people, and you're going to be told that you have to sit in front of a machine and crunch numbers the whole day, you're not going to become good at it because you don't enjoy it.
मजा नहीं आता आपको.
And unfortunately, what happens is, because there are all kinds of surveys, including salary surveys that get published, somehow the impression is that, that is me with that salary with this qualification. It is not, right? It is actually coming from this triumvirate of pieces, which is the work that you're doing, hard work, your professional qualification, and your communication. And if all of those three go well together, then you could be successful with each of them. So I think the need to define this is very important. I think the qualifications themselves are trying to expose people to it.
Right.
Saying that, you have to, if you want a charter, you have to work. If you want a certificate,
CFA, you have to have 3 years of work
experience. If you're a CA, you have to do,
the internship.
Articleship. So all of that is there, right? But somehow that is not giving that message strongly enough to people, saying that this is an individual choice. This is not about, everyone in my friend circle doing a CFA and therefore CFA is the right choice, or everyone in my friend circle doing a CFP and therefore it's the right choice. Unfortunately, we see this herd mentality, and we see it in markets.
Absolutely.
We see it in many places. I think the same thing is unfortunately following on degrees. And if you ask yourself, saying, where is my higher probability of success? You have to ask yourself, saying that, if you believe that every person in the country ultimately will need a financial advisor who gives them unbiased advice, then clearly, and you can work with only 100 people, let's imagine, clearly the number of CFPs who will be needed is going to be more than the number of CFAs or the number of chartered accountants. So if you're trying to apply math to this entire thing and saying, I want to see where my probability of success will be higher, then you probably come to the CFP. But if your intent is, equity analyst, etc., and you love numbers, and you're going to be okay with, waking up every morning. I'm sure you wake up every morning and see 4 company results. You have to be on top of what happened in US market last night, what happened in India market today morning, where did gold go, where did Trump make an announcement. I mean, all of that. You have to be ready for that.
Right.
Unfortunately, we see that, it appears like these qualifications are like you're ready to automatically become a superhero just through the qualifications.
Yeah, no, fair point. Nicely put. Let's just finish off by asking you what you see the 380 clients that you cater to. What do you think their biggest challenges will be over the coming decade?
So I think we are seeing 3 things. One I already alluded to. I think there is a lot of concern right now about what's going to happen to their careers and the children's careers because of what AI does or does not do. And the more investments that go into AI, the larger those fears are becoming. And what happens is that if they don't know how to deal with it, sometimes you sort of get gridlocked because your brain freezes.
Yeah, you just freeze with fear.
You're just not doing anything, right? So I think that's a concern that we are starting to see. So in the plans that we are now starting to put out to investors, we are actually starting to build out a little bit of a roadmap for their children as well to ensure that they don't get caught out in this journey. The second thing that we visualize is that the home bias always exists everywhere in the world. And obviously, because India has had a very strong story, and we still believe that India has a great story, investors will need to get comfortable with the fact that sometimes things that are out of their control will happen somewhere else in the world. and that same great story may not look as great as it was. And therefore, they need to go outside their comfort zone with their investment portfolios as well. Saying that, I need to have a part of my money in the US. I need to have a part of my money maybe in China. I need to have a part of my money in other geographies. I think they will need to
Diversify.
open up to that. Because the way we look at it is asset allocation has become popular, but the starting point of asset allocation in our mind is geography. It cannot be that I have India real estate, I have India equity, I have India debt, and then I say I have asset allocation.
That's not asset allocation.
So
Lovely.
it needs to start with geography.
Beautifully
and I
put,
think
yeah.
that's what is the second thing that's going to happen. The third shift that we are seeing is that I think a lot of information is going to flow out and continue to flow out to investors. And the more information that comes to them, the more feeling left out is going to happen.
FOMO.
FOMO is going to take on a very different dimension.
अच्छा, pervasive हो जाएगा.
So what then ends up happening is that how do they control their own activity levels such that they don't do too much harm to themselves is going to be their biggest requirement, because the amount of harm that you can do with information or excess information is very high. It's a bit like, since your show is called Coffee and Investing, it's very interesting to see, is coffee good for health or bad for health? And literally, every 2 days, you will see different people saying different things, and there'll be research backing it. Now, imagine if you changed your habits every second day, because the new research said 2 cups of coffee is good, but it should be black. 5 are terrible, but never have coffee before 3 o'clock, but have it between 2 and 3. It's best for your stomach. You'll go crazy. Right? And I think that's the challenge that investors are going to face.
Overload of information.
Too much information. And all of it will sound intelligent and right, because all of it will be backed by research. So how do you stay focused on what my needs are? Because my needs are unique. The research is generic. My needs are unique. And how do you therefore ensure that what you do is to your unique place, not to what is happening elsewhere? And I think that level of personalization will need to be where the answer will lie, saying that every piece of advice that comes to you will be exactly what you require. And I think that's where AI, tech, etc. can actually do a lot of work, because there's good quality data which will come out of it. But then how do you personalize it, scale? And for the investor to accept that, this is great for my friend, but it's terrible for me. Especially in a business like ours, where all our clients come from referrals. And unfortunately, India is a social investing country, which means that when you sit in the evening and have a drink with your friends, you will talk about where you've invested. And, if you have the same advisor, you'll wonder why he's giving me this, right? And I think I think
that's the happy note to end this podcast. One of the finest financial planners in the country, Vishal Dhawan, he's saying अगले 10 साल में 3 big challenges for Indian families. AI का impact अपने life के ऊपर, अपने बच्चों के life के ऊपर, global diversification, and thirdly information overload and how we process that information. Thank you very much, Vishal. This was fabulous. Congratulations to you, to Shalini, to your colleagues at Plan Ahead for everything you guys have achieved. Best of luck for that 10 years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.